Welcome to Chapter 3, Business Drivers for Access Control. So, what is the learning objective? What is the learning objective? Analyze on how data is classified, standard impacts the IT structure, and control requirements and implementation. So, a well thought out approach to access control implementation will allow us to have it. Some of our goals: what's the business requirements for asset protection? How information is classified, how information can be used competitively, what are the business drivers for access control, and how access control and value protected. These are some of the topics we're going to be covering. So, key points: business requirements, privacy and privacy laws, privacy regulations, compliance, access control, and data declassification. That's what we're going to be looking into for Chapter 3. So, what are intangible assets that the businesses have? Well, obviously we have paper records. When somebody creates something, we store it in filing cabinets. When we have electronic media, whether it's videos, recordings, applications, again, that's stored on a thing. And then there's also the intellectual property stored in people's heads. You know, you work for a company, you have this information. So how do we get all this information? How do we classify it? There's all different ways that companies use it. Obviously, filing cabinets. Where I worked, we ended up scanning everything into, so everything was electronic. And as far as the intellectual proprietary, we tried to have things documented by interviewing people. So these are some of the ways that it can be done. So, important roles of policy, starting with senior management. Organizations value intellectual properties, must control access to information to ensure survival. Protecting confidential information involves technical control, clear policies, sound business, and access control policies are effective only with support. In business, it's vital to protect assets that make doing business possible. Inventories and raw materials are kept in secure locations to avoid theft or damage. Information assets are no different. They're kept secure. In modern life, information is the lifeblood of an organization. Controlling who has access to this information and how they use it is vital for the profitability of the company. Technology can only do so much to safeguard confidential information. So what is senior management's role? Well, senior management must fully support any attempt to create an access control system protect may never go completion. Most senior managers realize this, and they also understand the importance of protecting key information. So we need to know how we're going to classify stuff. Classification schema is a method of organizing sensitive data into information into access levels. Only a person with the approved levels can have it. The access is called clearance, and everyone has it. So we care about sensitive information that gets classified, limiting availability to the organization. If you ever look at Coca-Cola, they have their recipe locked in a book, in a safe. Very few people know about it. The classification schema is the method of organizing sensitive information to the various access levels. Only a person with the approved level of access is to allow this to view this information. It's called the clearance of it. Also, we have national security schema. It has 3 main levels for unclassifying information. I don't want to get to that. Right? Unclassifying information, whether it's been unclassified isn't actually a classified level. It's the lack of classification level that this is used. The government may not classify it. Under the national security means anyone can have it. They have now all been condensed into one category: controlled unclassified information. Anyone can get access to this with the Freedom of Information Act. Confidential This is the lowest level of sensitivity. This is the information that would damage security if it was disclosed. The information may only be handled by personnel with security clearances, may not be disclosed to the public, and must be disposed of in a secure manner. Secret. This information would cause serious damage if disclosed. This is the most common classification level. Top secret. This is the highest level of information. It is defined as any information that would cause grave damage to national security. Information may be classified at any time a circumstance warrants. If information that may have been deemed classified confidential in 1982 might be considered secret or even top secret today. Likewise, information was top secret important in 1939 may become less. Corporations also have to worry about this. Just like governments, corporations need to restrict access to information. Private. Information that corporations want to keep internally. This is generally a category the rest of the categories are subsets of. Sensitive information, sensitive. Information that could harm the organization is compromised even though exposed to alterations. Bonus and salary information are two examples. Restricted. Any information that the corporation wants to limit access to, usually proprietary, often used interchangeable with trade secrets, but covers a wider range. The term proprietary covers the information a company derives competitive advantage from. A trade secret is any information that the organization holds that is not generally known to the public. Here's an example. In a hospital, for example, a data classification schema would identify the sensitivity of every piece of data in the hospital, from the cafeteria menu to patient's records. Everything has to be kept public, especially in a hospital. With HIPAA's laws, we have to worry about who can see what. Need to know or and least privilege. Need to know. A requester should not receive access just because of her clearance position. That means that they need to know about it. Just because they have level, they still might not need it. Requester must establish a valid need to see information. Access should be granted only if information is vital to the requester's office duties. Least privilege. Computer user or programmer should only have access needed to carry out the job. We talked about using the computers in Chapter 2 on how the workstation has to be protected. But we should grant that workstation the minimum amount of data so they can't see anything. So, declassification. Declassification is a process used to move classified documents into the public domain. Every country and organization that classifies its document has a method for declassification. Automatic declassification. This happens when the document is over 25 years old. Unless it meets restrict criteria, the document is automatically declassified if the department that owns the document reviews it. The document is then moved into publicity accessibility shelves in the National Archives. Systematic declassification. Any document that is under 25 years old but significant important to historic records of the United States is reviewed for early declassification. Once identified, these documents go through the same procedure. Mandatory declassification review. Instigated when the individual attempts to get a document declassified. After a review request has been filed, the owning organization must respond with approval or denial, or the inability to confirm or deny the existence or non-existence of the document. If the request denied, the requester can appeal for security classification. Freedom of Act request. This is an attempt by the members of the general public to get documents declassified. The Act allows for full or partial disclosure of the document. If owning the organization refuses the request, the decision is appealed to the jury. Sun Tzu, he was a famous Chinese general. He wrote The Art of War. And some of his ideas, many companies transfer them into the business world. Capture your market without destroying it. Sun Tzu called this win all without fighting. You must capture a market to be profitable. But if the act of capturing it ruins the profitability of the market, the fight wasn't worth an effort. Price of war of discussing above illustrates this concept well. It is not worth starting a price war if the results in the market in which you cannot sell the product anymore. Attack your competitors' weak points, avoid their strengths. If you take your competition head on against their strength, challenging a discount store on price, for example, you'll end up fighting a battle of attrition. Although you may win the battle, the victor will be costly. Focus on their weakness. Maximize your gains while minimizing the use of resources and increase your profits. For example, if you can't beat your competitors on price, focus on differentiation your business by providing customer experience. Use knowledge of your opponent's cunning to maximize your intelligence. To effectively attack your competitors' weak points, you must have a deep understanding of the business and decision process. Likewise, you have to strive to keep your plan secret and mask your actions to keep your competitors from utilizing the strategy. Use speed and preparation to overcome competition. To fully exploit your knowledge of your competition, you must act swiftly without hesitation. Your company must make decisions quickly and be able to anticipate the competitor's reaction. Use alliance and industry controls points to make competition conform to your will. Through a strong web of alliance and controls of strategy points in your industry, you control the rules of the contest. Increase your ability to anticipate competitors' actions. And last one, develop character as a leader to maximize employee effort. Take special kind of leader implementing these strategies and utilize the tremendous potential of its employees. So, I'm a big fan of Sun Tzu. You should read his book. And everything that he teaches, we can use in the business world. So, let's take a look at some business drivers for access control. What do we care about? Well, cost benefit. Cost benefit analysis is essential to pros and cons. List that helps businesses make decisions to decide whether a given piece of information justifies the effort investment of the access control. Consider two factors: the advantage gained from keeping information secret and the risk avoided. Some advantages gained. Once consideration of access control is that the advantage. Does the company gain advantage from securing information? Could its competitors gain similar information? Some risk avoidance. Another consideration, access control your risk, as you read earlier in the chapter. Risk assessment. We talked about the risk assessment, right? Chapter 2 described ways to conduct risk assessment in depth. Here we'll learn how to use that information discover during the risk assessment. One of the deliverables from risk assessment should be a prioritized list of threats and vulnerabilities, as well as a complete inventory of assets, including sensitive information. The inventory of information, also intellectual property, can help you determine what should be classified and what should not be classified. List all threats and vulnerabilities is another guideline that you should use. Business facilitation. Information is the backbone of every business, as we talked about. In manufacturing, inventory and order numbers determine how productive the assembly line has been. In the financial industry, constant changing stock prices and day-to-day fluctuation. In terms of business facilitation, there are essential 3 levels. Understanding access. A newsletter, for example, to understand access levels, let's use the corporation newsletter. Corporate newsletter is a tool used to distribute more important information such as dates and benefits enrollment. All employees have permission to read this, but only a few are allowed to publish it and change it. An order process, another level. Understanding access levels. Order process. What about other information sources within the company? Consider a single order for a herb garden kit. Mike is the customer. When the order is placed and the data is stored in the database, notifications are sent that he will be getting the information. The assembly line gets the information to package it. Shipping will then package it up and send it out. Customer service has to read the details and send it out. Customer selves have to read and write access at the only point of that information. Controlling who can modify this is important. Cost containment. What would it cost the company if given a piece of information released to the public? As you see today, everything that goes on, what is hidden and what is it? They take the stock market takes very care in what every CEO says. If someone says, we might make third quarter numbers, stock prices could drop. We might make something happen. So it's very important that we understand. In some cases, there may be actual monetary things that might cause problems. The right information. Let's see, IT risk management. Let's see. Yeah, that's what it was. IT risk management. The risk assessment itself can be considered sensitive information. The risk assessment report contains a number of pieces of information that could have devastating effect in the wrong hands. Full asset inventory, vulnerability assessment, threat assessments, mitigation plans. These things are kept hidden, so no one knows what's going on except who needs to know. The full assessment inventory. Assessed inventory contains within risk assessment report should contain a list along with the location of information. Vulnerability assessment. For the risk assessment to be useful, it must look at the weaknesses in the infrastructure. Every system has weaknesses. Doesn't matter who you are. They are unavoidable and a fact of life. The point of risk assessment is to look honestly at those weaknesses and determine how to fix them, if they are worth fixing. What would be the loss if they gave up? Threat assessment. Threat assessment is similar to vulnerability assessment, with one slight difference. While the vulnerability assessment looks at weaknesses within the existing infrastructure, threat assessment deals with potential weaknesses that can be exploited by your competitor. So what does electronic data look like? Something nice and simple. Looks just like this. It is stored on our in a database or somewhere in there. So we want to make sure that we have it. We can ask, is it confidential? This will put a special flag around it. So we can say, hey, this is important. We can limit who can see this information. The order process. Again, we want to keep this. Who can change information? Order creation. Customer has read-write. They can order what they want. They can change it and put it in. Then it goes to the ordering process. Now, once the order processing, customer can only read it once it's put in. They can't make the change. If they want any changes, the order processing has to change because now it's in the system. Customer service has read-write abilities because if they have to make a change. Shipping, customer can only see what's happening. You go online, FedEx if you want, or UPS. You can go and just see what's happening, track your package. Well, that's what this would be. But the shipping representative, if they had to change it, could change it to read-write access. Customer service has read-write access. Then when the order is closed, customer has read-only, but customer service can determine when it was finished. Now, accidental dissemination. This is something that happens, and it was the fall of many companies. The CIO might write something to his managers or any manager. And if this person accidentally says this information and sends it to this group, it might not be what was intended for. So when you have dissemination of data, you want to make sure that it is set to the right group of people at the right time. Right, if the warehouse manager, if the right information, let me go back one. We want to make sure the right information is sent out on Monday morning for the final reports to the right people at the right time. That is what's important about all this, that we send it out when it's required. Controlling access and protecting value. Confidential information is the most common asset that is devalued by failure in access control. In this case, information is only valuable if it's hidden. If confidential information becomes common knowledge, it ceases to hold special meaning. Importance of internal access control. Some information is confidential internally and externally. Salary and benefit information is a classic example of privileged information that must be controlled internally. Certain employees have the right to see that. Importance of external controls. Trade secrets and business plans are some of the information that should be secured for external disclosure. You learned early in this chapter the consequences of failing to secure that type of confidential information. Implementation of access control vendors and third parties. It is usually straightforward to implement access control to safeguard internal information and to control what information is released to the public when business begins to work with contractors, vendors, and third parties. Without outside contractors are hired to provide products and services on example. Physical security of sensitive information. For security records of information, whether it's a file or an electronic document, it has to be secured. Access is regularly linked to functions, responsibility, not position. Security of background investigations are required. So these are some of the things that we need to look about when we physically want to have sensitive data. Again, whether it's a file or in online. How do we go about classifying information? The business decides. Existing IT processes, regulatory, we have to take all this into consideration on this side. Identification, data sets, supporting infrastructure, information systems. What are we going to put in? Who can see this information? This is that schema we talked about. This is where we get hidden. Does it align with our standards and procedures? Does it have internal controls? And then we modify our process so it stays this, and our strategic directions and governments. This is the driving force of what happens. At times we need to destroy data destruction. Where I worked, the accounting department had shredders. Any documents that were printed had to be shredded. There were no, if it wasn't filed in a locked in key, you couldn't leave anything over the night. But we had shredders that would come in and get shred. You couldn't put it in trash cans. Data awaiting destruction to be placed in lockable containers, strict and confidential. So we had shredders that would do this. Our shredders looked something like this. You put it on and it would shred it, and they would come pick it up. So basically, business requirements for asset protection, privacy and privacy laws, privacy regulations, compliance. We also talked about information can be classified and why businesses, governments go to great lengths to keep certain data. Look at several business drivers that we needed. Thank you. That's the end of chapter 3.